Hello everyone, it's your favourite wolf-obsessed ecologist here to celebrate International Wolf Day, that I didn't know existed until today. So I thought I'd make a video on the issue that is the most focused interest that I have at this point in my life, and it has been for many, many years, probably close to a decade, maybe even more. And that is the reintroduction of the grey wolf into the British Isles. So that includes England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. Because we all need them, and here is why. But I will go over it in an unbiased, possible way as I can. The problem is, when you are an ecologist, as I am, you are biased to the truth. And the truth is, ecologically speaking, we need the wolf. And it will benefit all factors of human life when you are in the countryside, you're in the wilds, and even branching into that, if you are concerned by crops and animal welfare, etc., etc. It is all connected, and I will try to do my best to show you how. So I'll start with the cons. And why am I starting with the cons of having wolves back? Because it is a much shorter list than the pros. And the glaring biggest issue with wolf reintroduction is the hazard that poses to livestock. And I will not sugarcoat it. Livestock, if wolves are reintroduced, if we keep currently doing things the way they are now, they will be killed. And they will be killed a lot. Especially sheep, which are very dopey and have very little in the ways of a survival instinct. Farmers will need to be reimbursed for loss of livestock. That is understandable, and I do not think that shouldn't go ahead. If farmers are losing livestock, that should be paid for by the government or NGOs. And I don't think that's an issue. That is a very surmountable issue. Countries have been doing this around the world for decades and decades, perhaps even centuries in countries that are a little ahead of the game. Now, a lot of people, friends included, have asked me, where is the money coming from? Well, currently in the UK, we have a very strange way of paying our livestock farmers. Basically, the sheep industry is only being propped up by tax subsidies. Basically, everyone who lives in the UK, who pays tax, a good chunk of that goes to paying sheep farmers just to have so many head of sheep in their fields or wherever they keep them. This gives a massive incentive for farmers to just have as many sheep as possible, despite the fact that it costs more money to shear a sheep than the wool is worth. So the wool industry, very small, which is a massive shame because it's an eco-friendly way of producing clothing material, as opposed to, like the materials that have lots of plastics in them. But only if you do it in a sustainable way, which current sheep farming methods widely across the UK are not. The meat in the UK is not largely, in considering that sheep farming takes up the majority of land space in terms of livestock, it does not contribute significantly to British meat consumption. It is often shipped abroad at a loss, and even if it is eaten here domestically, it is also a loss. And that is why British taxes a lot of money from British taxes goes into supporting this failing industry. And I have spoken to a good deal of farmers and ex-farmers about this. You can read further about this in books like Derek Gow's Birds, Beast and Bedlam. He used to be a sheep farmer. He was for decades, and now he has moved on to more sustainable practices and rewilding. It's a very interesting thing. George Monbiot, again, he is not a farmer himself, but he has a very good insight into this industry. Unbiasedly, you can look more from the farmer's perspective, people who are currently farming, like Isabella Tree. She is a massive rewilder. She doesn't tend to use the term rewilding because it sparks a lot of debate, which that's a different topic and it can be confusing. What does it even mean? But regardless, her book, Wilding, and the Book of Wilding, because she has two now, it showcases how farming nowadays is not sustainable and it can be quite damaging to the ecosystem and environment at large. So that's that part of the cons. It will require a shift in management if wolves are reintroduced. I should say when, because it's got to happen. It has to. Basically, again, sheep for the main part are just kept in very poor conditions out and about. If you've gone to Wales, Northern England, Scotland, all across the country, sheep are just kept in very shoddy conditions, often not with a place to hide under, no trees, because they can hardly ever survive in a place with too many sheep, because they will strip bark, eat young shrubs and trees, and when the trees die of old age, there is nothing there to replace them. So a lot of these sheep farms do not have any areas from which that the animals can weather out poor conditions. And that leads me into another thing. Almost every time I spend a decent amount of time in a sheep paddock, which ecologists in the UK unfortunately find themselves in a lot, the amount of dead animals you come across is quite high. And I would hazard a bet that a lot of these animals across the world that are killed by wolves and other predators are actually scavenged from animals that just die. Because, as any farmer will tell you, sheep die just by no reason a lot of the time. I was swimming not too long ago, actually, I think it was near Bolton. And there was a RSPB or National Trust owned land that still had some sheep. Actually, it was pretty low density, so I was okay with that. Low density tends to be less impact. But regardless, whoever owned those animals, whether it was the NGO or if it was a sheep farmer, I noticed two ravens circling above, nearby the swimming area. And I thought, very strange, ravens aren't too common in this area. So, interested as an ecologist always is in the natural world, I hopped over the ridge, saw some sheep, and I noticed that they were landing next to a sheep that was lying down. Upon further investigation, this was this year's lamb dead. And ravens often get blamed for killing them, which, if you look at a raven, that's just not possible. A lamb this size is around 30 to 40 kilograms. They are not vulnerable little creatures anymore. This animal had just died, no understanding why, but this happens a lot. So, from an animal welfare perspective, sheep farming needs to change. Whether it's the implementation of shepherding, which doesn't happen a lot in the UK. A sheep farmer is not a shepherd, and a shepherd is not a sheep farmer, but they can be. Whoops-a-daisy, hit the mic. Basically, you need to implement having shepherds there, because that, one, means they always have someone who's keeping an eye on their livestock, and two, they can flag any issues that they see in the livestock. I recently went to a place in Wales called Plas Cardian, the place of the Dean, and in this smaller field that is rented out by my university to farmers in the area, again, not a high density of sheep, but there were sheep in there, younger ones, limping. And I found two skeletons of this year's lambs. I have a friend from the same university who will remain unnamed who raises goats with his family, and he told me that in the farming industry, it is quite expensive to dispose of animals properly, which I can understand. You don't want to waste a lot of money on something so much a pain in the bum. And to be fair, carcasses being left out in the countryside is good for wildlife. It's great. Probably not good for the other livestock because disease spreads quite well in that type of environment. But for wildlife, that is great carrion. Yes, so that is the livestock portion. a lot of change will need fences, livestock guardian animals and shepherds, implementation. But considering how much money goes into keeping sheep farmers afloat already, this is a tiny ask. A tiny, tiny ask. Pets. Again, it is a surmountable issue. Wolves tend to leave... they tend not to be very close to densely inhabited human settlements, where you'll find most pets. If you live in the countryside, could be a different story. But, and this is going to get me a lot of hate, if you have a cat, do not let it outside unsupervised. We already have foxes, which occasionally do predate on cats anyway. Eagles, I have a friend who's unfortunately lost over 5, I believe it is, cats to eagles. Over the years, he lives in Norway, different place, but we do have eagles on the rise here, which is great. It's good for the environment, but cats are not. I have 2 friends who both have cats. One who takes her cat out on a leash, and the other just follows her and then comes right back in the house, is not left outside unsupervised. And that is incredible, and it's happening more and more. If you're able to keep your cat stimulated, keep them indoors, unless you take them out on a leash. It is for the best. You can look this up again. All over the internet, you'll see cases of cats that cause havoc for the ecosystem at large. I do love seeing cats out and about and giving them a good scratch and showing them some love, but if you're out in the countryside and there's this added danger of wolves, keep them inside. Or just in general, cats don't belong out there. They're a domestic species. It's not cruel. My 20-year-old cat, she lives indoors, and she has chosen to do that from her very young days. Literally, garden door open all the time, goes outside. No, this is not for me. She comes back in. Not all cats are like that. I just got lucky. With dogs, it's illegal to let them roam anyway without a leash or being in an area where it's legal to do so. If you come to an area when wolves are reintroduced and you let them off, you have to be extremely careful. Wolves will see dogs as a threat because they'll see them as another similar species. And they could, and have, in different places, killed them. And it's unfortunate, but this is their world. This is a world we have to share because cleansing the world of predators is not something that is good for the environment. It's not good for us. It is not smart. It makes no sense. But for the most part, if humans are nearby, dogs are left alone. Again, such a small issue in general. And going back to the problem with sheep, even in areas where you have bears, lynx, and wolves in the wild, across Europe, for example, feral dogs kill thousands more than any of those 3. Perhaps even more combined. It is redonkulous. So keep your dogs on a leash unless you're in a applicable safe space. No issue whatsoever. And I believe that is actually all she wrote. Oh, no, the danger to humans. Wolves have and can kill humans. They are a large animal. I am a 100 kilogram human male, and I could be killed by a 40 kilogram wolf. It is possible. They have strong jaws. But for the most part, wolves are quite shy around humans. Now, ever since wolves have been reintroduced to Yellowstone National Park, there have been 0 cases of death by wolf in and around the region. That is insane. Most deaths that occur via wolves occur in places like Turkey and Russia. These are places where rabies are pretty prevalent. Wolves don't usually attack humans. Generations upon generations of persecution by humans has weeded out the wolves that are usually interested, or the animals in general that are interested in seeing humans as a prey source. And now you are left with wolves that are very timid to humans. And most cases, 99.9% of the time, these cases are influenced by rabies, and that animal just is insane, essentially. But There is always a risk that comes with any predator, but it's an acceptable risk. You are, again, more likely to be attacked by a dog in the countryside. You are more likely to be attacked by a cow in the countryside. Even in areas where you have bears, wolves, and lynx, this is an animal that wants nothing to do with you. I believe globally the last person to die via a wolf attack was 2019. That is incredibly tiny. You are more likely to be bitten by a New Yorker in the subway of New York than you are by a wolf in wolf-infested areas. It is insane, but it is the truth. So, hopefully, that's been enlightening. 15 minutes of rambling, but considering how I usually ramble, this is pretty short. So if you've skipped ahead to this part, we'll get on to the pros of wolves. So, the most blaringly obvious thing that wolves do is they help keep deer numbers and densities in check. And that's what I'm wearing right now, actually. I'm wearing a t-shirt that showcases how important it is to reintroduce the wolf. Because they are chasing the red deer across Scotland. That's what that is. But wolves wouldn't stop at the border here in the UK. Obviously, they'd bleed into England and hopefully into Wales. And then once the Irish get a head on their shoulders as well, they'll be like, if the English can do it, we can too. That was a terrible Northern Irish accent. But regardless, it's necessary. So, I have been studying wolves for a good number of years. I have helped out with wolf conservation in Slovakia, trekking through the Carpathian Mountains for 10 to 20 kilometers a day for a good number of weeks. It was exhausting work. I never saw a wolf myself, but I saw their kills, their scat, their fur, their blood, because a female was in estrus. Weird, but they were there. Very recently, I heard a boar squeal, perhaps being attacked by wolves, because in Slovakia, they eat boar. It's incredible, incredible. Very healthy system they have going on there. But to go into further detail. So, when wolves are prevalent in an environment, they make deer and other prey species more likely to move and constantly keep a head over their shoulder. They're looking over their shoulder constantly for a predatorial threat. That doesn't happen with humans. Humans come to a location, track, maybe over a good distance, choose a healthy-looking animal, and fire. Now, with deer culling, maybe they'll just shoot more indiscriminately. I don't know how that works, but what we do know is it doesn't actually lower the number of deer efficiently, and it doesn't change their behaviors. Deer in the UK currently number close to 2 million, which is a lot less than the ecosystem could support if they had a predator keeping their numbers and the behavior in check, because the key point is actually their behavior. So deer currently, they have no predators, no proper true native predators to keep them in check. If lynx, bears and wolves were here, they'd constantly be moving, eating a little bit, moving, eating a little bit, moving, and checking out their surroundings, because at any moment they could be predated by any of these animals. When wolves are introduced, this landscape of fear or ecology of fear will be reintroduced with them. And when the deer stop overgrazing in one area or overbrowsing, as is the case with many deer species, this allows forests to regrow. Wolves do not need forests to survive, unlike bears and lynx. Bears and lynx both need the forest to be there already, but the wolves do not. They can inhabit a massively wide range of environments, from tundra to desert, forest, open wood pasture, heathland. As long as the prey is there, the wolves will follow, and they will do an amazing job at keeping them on the move, eating what they need, and then waiting, moving on, following them where they need to go. It is incredible. And it's not just deer and boar that they consume. some people might not like this, but wolves will also predate on mesocarnivores. What is a mesocarnivore? These are animals like foxes and badgers here in the UK. Across the pond in America, this is the coyote. In Europe, this can also be golden jackals. Now, in the UK, we have something close to 1 million foxes and badgers, which is more than many ecosystems can actually take on. I love these animals. They are very cool and, again, vital. I like deer and boar. But the numbers and densities that they're at currently is unnatural. This is because they don't have the predator to keep their numbers in check or their behaviors. Foxes and badgers are quite bold now. They venture into cities and towns, get fed because we feed them. And maybe around cities and towns, that's not going to change very quickly or at all. But in the wider countryside, this puts animals at risk of heavy predation. Rare voles, rare rodents, rare birds, ground nesting birds in particular, will get predated on a lot by these mesocarnivores. For wolves, they're not really a key focus or interest. But with the reintroduction of the wolf, keeping these mesocarnivore numbers down, it will really, really help these other species that aren't their focus prey. Will wolves occasionally eat a capercaillie? Yes, if they can catch it, but it's not their focus prey. In the wild, in a natural ecosystem, a healthy ecosystem, or even semi-natural, wolves find 1 or 2 species to focus on, and that will make up 99% of their diet. The rest will just be, oh, there's a frog there? Yeah, sure. Or maybe they'll come across a root they can eat, or grasses. It's weird. They don't eat them very often, but they do sometimes. It is not a massive part of their diet, but they're very good generalists. If an area is more conducive to hunting moose, they will switch to predating on moose. In Slovakia, they heavily predate in the Lower Carpathians, on red deer, with roe making up the other 40%. In the higher altitudes of the Carpathians, they prefer wild boar because it is more conducive and energetically efficient to prey on these animals. It's fascinating stuff. You can find this easily on Google Scholar. Don't go to just some news reports. You can't trust those. But please, go to where the science has been done. It is fantastic. These animals, again, I'm smitten with them. So with the reduction in these ungulates and the mesocarnivores, mesopredators in general, this obviously helps restore natural ecosystems like the Celtic rainforest that we are supposed to have here in Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales. We are supposed to be quite full of Celtic rainforest, as well as open wood pasture, an assortment of other environments that are being degraded by humans, just, exploiting, as humans do, but overgrazed in a massive assortment by deer and overrooted in some densities like in some places like the Forest of Dean by boar, which haven't really been allowed to leave and spread their genes elsewhere. They're a native species, and we don't have enough boar in the UK. But if they occur at too high a density in one place, that's not good for the environment. Same with deer, same with any species. But you might be asking, won't the wolves eventually become too dense? This is the wonderful thing about apex predators. That doesn't happen. Now you might be thinking, that makes no sense. How can that not happen? Well, if you think about it, a lot of people like to think that humans keep predators in check because, that's an excuse a lot of people use over in the Americas. We've got to keep the population down. But what happened before humans left Africa? What happens in Africa today? What happens in Asia? What happens across the world in places where humans don't occur at high densities? Which obviously those aforementioned places, they do. But in certain pockets, there are areas where humans are barely ever seen. I'm getting very warm. It is summer, and I'm in the highest part of the house. Predators control each other's numbers, or the environment itself keeps their numbers in check. Wolves are highly territorial. You staying with wolves because this is what the video is about. Wolves will not tolerate predation of their prey sources within their territory. They just won't. So any wolves that come in from a neighboring pack, they will fight, and they will usually only kill the leaders, not alphas, because remember, alphas don't exist. It's the mom or dad, or the eldest sibling, depending on what pack dynamic they're using. They may kill them. More often than not, they get chased off. And it is sad, but nature is not kind nor cruel. It's just indifferent. The injured animals that haven't been able to get enough food, they will die of starvation, or they will die through conflict with other predators like other wolves. This is what happens. This is survival of the fittest, those most able to adapt to change, not the fittest. It's those animals that best fit their environment. If there's two wolf packs and one wolf pack is more dominant than the other, they'll chase them out of the area where the other pack is trying to get into, and those weaker members of that pack that aren't able to survive on the lower rations of food, they die off, and it's just a sliding scale, and it happens, and they control each other's numbers. That is how it happens naturally. Same with lions in Africa. That will also happen between species. So if we had, saying the Africa thing for a second, hyenas might ambush a lone lion and kill it, or they might kill the cubs. This happens. It's sad, but it is nature. It happens in Europe and America as well, across the world. Wolves, bears, and big cats, they don't like each other. They will kill each other if given the chance. If bears come across a wolf kill, they'll bully their way in, and the wolves will just be like, great, we're just going to sit here and wait. Because often they don't win that. But if a bear comes to a wolf's den to try and kill its pups, which they can and will do, the wolves usually chase them off or kill them. And that's that. That's the balance. Wolves will do the same thing. They'll go to a bear's den or a mother bear and try and kill her cubs because that's competition. Dealt with. There is a intricate dance between predators that happens on a daily basis across the world. Intraspecific, which is within the species, so wolf on wolf, or interspecific between two different predators. You might think, well, humans count there. There is an argument for that, and perhaps it will come to the point of wolves coming into certain areas where there's a problem, in which case, I hate to say it, they are my favorite animal. If a wolf is becoming a problem, overpredating on livestock, or even becoming a threat to people, it would have to be euthanized. That's the thing with living with large predators. You have to make it work with people because ultimately people make the decision. And if one animal is creating an issue for the entire species can suffer. But just back on a good thing that wolf reintroduction can do. So again, with their impact on their prey sources, wolves can prevent crops being stolen by deer, which often you think about the impact it has on livestock, and the farming community gets in an uproar saying, we'll never have it because it'll lower our income, which, if we do things right, it's very negligible. It really, really is. Plenty of research out there. Please look it up for yourself. Don't take my word on it. But no one ever speaks to the people who grow crops. Just think about that. There are 2 million deer just grazing wherever they want. Our forests are... We have less than 14% forest cover in the UK. It is ridiculous. But think about the crops. Crops are everywhere. Crops are vital for us. Crops are vital for the animals we eat. But the deer are coming in here and ravaging crops all across the country. But do they get to have a say? A lot of the time they don't. There was a shepherd recently in the news in Iberia, I believe. And Iberian wolves are one of his favourite animals, even though he loves sheep and looks after sheep. But by shepherding, he's able to step in there and be like, hey, don't eat my animals. I've got livestock guardian dogs, and they'll tell you a new one, and he can chase them off himself too. But he loves the wolves because they help keep his other business thriving. They keep the deer the deer and boar from eating his crops. It is a fascinating dynamic that I think all sorts of farmers around the world can adopt. Be like, oh, good. The wolves are in the field again. They're not interested in the corn or the wheat. But they just got a roe deer. Good on, lads. Good on. Good fertilizer. Thank you. There is a beautiful thing that can arise from having farmers on side of the wolf. Another benefit, they lower the spread of disease. Think of the idea where wolves will be crunching down on badgers at a lower density than, deer, but they will. TB occasionally spreads through badgers. It is not their main vector, that is scientifically proven, but they will stabilize badger numbers and limit the spread of TB by crunching down and eating badgers. Same with diseases spread by foxes or deer, which are a higher vector for bovine tuberculosis. In Slovakia, the wolves that have decided to predate on boar are helping slow the effects of African swine fever in the area. Incredible. That could be devastating to pork farmers. Again, a massive unforeseen benefit that is being experienced in mainland Europe as we speak. But unfortunately, livestock farmers tend to think too much about, no, for generations we've been enemies with the wolf, we have to kill them off. Not true, and it is a very silly way to think. Ecosystems in general will stabilize. As I've mentioned, wolves hunt the deer, keep them moving, forests regrow. And the great thing about forests and trees and other massive holds of vegetation is they help make the environment what it is. If you think about uphill land, mountainous land, in the UK, there are barely any trees. There is barely any vegetation that is not grazed down to the ground by sheep or deer. But if there were, that would help stabilize the land itself, because as trees and other plants get their roots into the soil, it helps stop the flow of water going downhill and flooding areas. We suffer from flooding a lot. It is raining right now here. I'm not in an area that floods frequently, but it does happen a lot in the lowlands of the UK, and that's thanks to runoff from uphill. That also washes down nutrients, making the rivers worse, and obviously that affects all the aquatic life in the rivers. Combined wolf predation on deer helping the vegetation with the beavers that are being now accepted widely across the UK, they are a powerful combination for ecological stabilization. I can't even go into detail enough to show the benefits that having wolves stabilize the vegetation communities, help stabilize the vegetation communities, will do for the wider ecosystem. You'll just have to see it for yourself when they come back. And one thing that a lot of people don't think about is wolves can actually save human lives. How do they do this? Again, it's with the deer. I think last year in Lancashire alone, 100 and... let's see if I have that up real quick. Yes. Oh, computer's not acting good. There were around 194 deer collisions in 2023, just in Lincolnshire. I don't know how many of those were fatal, but they are on the rise with the number of deer. In areas where wolves are prevalent, deers do not hang around roads nearly as often or as long. It has been shown that in areas with wolf predation, road traffic collisions with deer lower around 30%. That is incredible. In countries where you have healthy wolves, that's hundreds of lives saved compared to the fact that wolves barely ever hurt people or attack people, think about how much good that could do. And yet we are very short-sighted and think, animal, big dog, sharp teeth, hurt me. We are too often focused on the very tiny, insignificant chances that we often forget about the overflow of good that comes from a species. And that is one of the best ones we can think about. I have rambled almost 40 minutes about the good wolves can instow across this great nation of ours. So I won't ramble too much longer. I could go on literally hours. I have devoted my life now to trying to get the wolf back here into the UK. I will continue to do so because only once we restore healthy ecology to the UK can I rest. Because right now I look out this window and I only see a myriad of species in my garden because I have taken up the role of making sure it is healthy. I see cherry I've planted. I've seen apples, which aren't native, so it's just for me really. I see beech, birch. It's a weird mishmash here. It's not exactly natural, but it's been great. I've seen tons of species of moths, elephant hawk moths, some things I don't know the names of, cinnabar, they're in the garden because of the ragwort, and in the pond there are frogs aplenty, all sorts of species chose my garden because I chose to make it more biodiverse. Imagine that on a grand scale where places can grow wild once again thanks to the wolf keeping the deer from overgrazing and eventually keep the boar from over-rootling into too much of space. Anyway, I think that's that. Unless I've forgotten something, let me have a look. I made a document and everything for this. Oh yeah, one last thing, because obviously they will kill deer and other animals, they will spread nutrients further inland, which because of all this rain and all the generations of runoff has kind of been swept away from a lot of the uplands. It'll help plants again. Plants, you gotta love them. They make an environment what it is. It has not been too long. Ecologically speaking, wolves should be here. And from everything I've just told you, they are a vital member of this country's ecology, this world's ecology. To be thought of, oh, this is just a flight of fancy. You just want wolves because you think they're cool. They are cool. That is a fact. But I want them here because we need them here. And if you want to support rewilding opportunities and flaunt this cool t-shirt yourselves, it is linked in the description, and none of that money goes to me at all. 0%. It goes to the Rewilding Institute. I wanted to do it more focused on, wolf reintroduction, rewilding here in the British Isles, but Bonfire wouldn't let me do that. They're just like, oh no, you need to choose from this list of American companies. But luckily, the Rewilding Institute does do things all across the world. So if you're an American, if you're a Canadian, if you're from China, Japan, India, Brazil, England, no matter where you are in the world, this institution is funding projects across it. And that is a fantastic thing. And you, yourself, God damn, I keep going the wrong way. You can support the wolf by just spreading the word and taking what you learnt here today and what you might learn from reading further and spreading the word that the wolf is vital. Happy Wolf Day, everyone. I hope this video has been informative and that my rambling hasn't been too annoying. But anyway, have a good day, and I'll see you next time.